All right. Okay. So welcome to, this is week one. We're starting a brand new book study today. Super excited about that. We're going to go through what to say when you talk to yourself. And we just came out of a book where we got some really practical tips and guidelines on how to do what we do in network marketing. To be able to implement those well, mindset is such a huge key. What are we telling ourselves every day? Right? What is that? What's going on between the ears? I read this book in the past and it was super impactful. And like every time you take some nuggets out of it, and you'll find you'll go through your day and you'll kind of replay some of those. I will share one of those as we get into one of the chapters here, chapter 2, something that's been impactful to me. But when we read a book again, whether for the first or second time, you just sometimes pick up different things, and it's a really good reminder. So mindset affects every area of our life, truly, truly does. So this is going to be applicable not only to our Plexus business, maybe you're just loving the products, that's great too. It's going to be applicable to your marriage, your family life, your work life outside of this. So we're going to dive in. We are going to go through chapters 1 through 3. This is a book broken up into small chapters. So my aim is to do 3 a week. And that's going to take us to, I'm just going to mute up a few, that's going to take us to about 8 weeks if we stay on track. And that's a nice length for a book study, so we don't drag it out too long, and we'll get some great conversation. If you have people you're listening and you know that they would love to listen to this, or even a family member, they don't need to be in Plexus, go ahead and send them the link. I'm going to upload them all onto YouTube, the recordings, and I will make a post in Rock and Wellness that has the recordings from each week. So I'll try to stay on top of that. But let's get into chapter 1. This book, you will see me reading a little bit line for line in here because I just can't put it into words better than he can. I mean, it is phenomenal, some of what's in here. I've got a very highlighted, written up book, which is classic to me. But if you have the book, welcome to follow along. Starting on, actually in the introduction, so no page number. But what I have underlined here, this whole book is based on all the research that they have done with neuroplasticity. And it's actually a phenomenal topic to talk about, because when we recognize and when we learn what our brain is able to do and how we can change the course and direction of our mindset, of the outcomes of our life, that is extremely motivating. So he says, today, most people understand that we get programmed from birth, that our brains are literally wired for success or failure, and that we end up living out those programs for better or for worse. But many people still struggle to get rid of the old programs that are negative or holding them back and aren't sure how to overcome. So how many times, you guys can raise your hands, how many times do you hear people saying, well, that's just the way it is, right? I guess that's just my destiny, right? That is not just the way it is. Let me correct you right now. Okay, I went through I could write a Hollywood movie on what my childhood and upbringing and just some of the things I've gone through look like. My sister and I grew up in the same home, right? We've come out of it as 2 different people. And so it doesn't have to do with, well, that's just the way it is. No, that can make you stronger. So that's what this book is going to be based out of, is we don't have to hang on to this idea that, oh, I'm just programmed, that's the way it's going to be, doesn't matter what I'm going to do. That is an Eeyore. Okay, like I want to go like Eeyore. That is not the way it has to be. The rule of neuroplasticity, which has shown that our brains become wired with new information, strongest and fastest with repetition, is what's going to be so impactful in this book. You're going to hear things repeated over and over. He does that for a reason. So if you're someone who likes taking notes, if you hear me saying something like in the same words essentially over and over, make sure to write that down, because he says right in here, I do that on purpose, because you reading it and hearing it with repetition is also part of the neuroplasticity. So we're going to get into chapter 1. I'm super looking forward to this. Chapter 1 is called Looking for a Better Way. Every day I feel like we wake up, most people wake up, and we're looking for a better way. We want to be better. We want to do better, right? We don't want to just settle. That's why you guys are on here this morning. We are looking, what's the answer? It's why they have self-help books filling up Indigo Amazon chapters, and people are buying them by the millions because they're desperate and they're wanting to know, how do I change? What do I do different? So this little quote at the beginning, I love. He says, you are everything that is, your thoughts, your life, your dreams come true. You are everything you choose to be. Is that awesome? You are everything that you choose to be. You get to choose, not somebody else, but you get to choose. So I'm going to read from the first page in chapter 1. We have all heard what life is supposed to offer: endless opportunities, fulfillment of our dreams, a chance to live each day in a way that brings happiness and excess. We've all heard it, right? Most of us want and need at least a successful job or career, a good family life, and a reasonable financial security. That kind of covers all the basics, right? A happy family, you want to be financially secure, and to be financially secure, people feel like I need a really good stable job or career, right? Kind of encompasses all of it. You'll get some extras. He says we expect that from life. We know deep inside that we deserve our fair share and we have every right to attain it, which is super true. Have you ever wondered then, why didn't things work out the way they should? Why do we not get from life many of the things that we want to have and feel we should? Why do some people seem to be lucky while the great majority of the rest of us seem to be not? We've heard that how many times? They just lucked out. Oh, they just had a horseshoe up their bum, right? Oh, must be nice to be them, right? We're comparing because we are thinking deep down, I deserve that too. So what's going on here? And sometimes we can get a little bit inside ourselves, right? And where we have trouble being happy for someone else, it's coming out of that, well, why don't I have that? What, like, I'm doing everything right. Why don't I have that too? So why are some people day to day happier, more productive, more fulfilled than others, right? What makes the difference? And that's what he's going to talk about. He says, is the control, top of page 2, is the control of our lives in our hands or isn't it? What holds us back and what is the wall that stands in our way? So are you guys excited to hear what's going on here? Because this book is literally earth-shattering. So down middle of page 2, he says, this is a story he's telling. When I was quite young, I had a soaring imagination long before I learned what we could not do. I dreamed of doing what we could. So do you remember being a child and literally having the wildest dreams and imagination? And you hear little kids all the time. You'll hear a little 3 or 4-year-old say, I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm going to go to the moon. And you'll either have 2 kinds of responses. You're going to get a mom or dad who says, you bet, buddy, you can do whatever you put your mind to. Or you're going to get the other response that says, oh, haha, that's funny. What makes you think you're going to do that? I've heard people tell me at 37 years old all the time, what makes you think you can do that? Do you see the 2 differences? I see Jill nodding, right? Jill gets it. So he's saying when we're kids, you're laying on the grass, you're staring up at the clouds, you're daydreaming, you're playing imagination, you're coming up with all sorts of like wild and amazing. And then something happens. All of a sudden we go from like feeling like I can do anything to being insecure, feeling like I can't, feeling like I don't know if I should even try, right? So what's happening in there in the middle? He said for himself, it was only later that my dreams gave way to more practical considerations. You hear parents and adults and people in your life saying, just get your head out of the clouds. Like, get your feet on the ground, get your head on your shoulders, right? He says, I learned all of the shoulds, the musts, the cannots. I was told it was bad to have your head in the clouds and it was good to have your feet on the ground. Here's an example that I'm pulling out of my own, that years ago somebody said to me that always stuck with me. At what point in life do we go from looking at a dandelion as like a really beautiful little flower that you pick for your mom, you're running around the yard, you're giving her bouquets of dandelions, right? Boys or girls, to all of a sudden determining that that is the most disgusting weed in your yard, like get me the Roundup. Where does that happen, right? Isn't that an easy example to hang on to? Dandelions go from being the most beautiful little flower, you're so proud of your little bouquet, to being the most horrendous, ugly weed in your yard, and we are running to the home improvement stores to get as much chemicals as we can to blast those things, right? My sister-in-law to this day refuses to kill them. She's a little bit earthy. She's like, I look at dandelions and she's like, the more the merrier. She's like, it's like I didn't even have to plant flowers in my yard. They live in the country. Okay, so it's a mindset thing. So he says, from time to time, I had a nagging suspicion that there was more to all of this than what was meeting the eye. I just couldn't see it yet. So he went on a mission to try to figure out what exactly is going on here. He said, I decided it was time to stop and look at the stars again. The result of that one small decision changed the direction of my life. We're about to change the direction of our life. I'm realizing I like to put my hand in the air. That means listen up. I did that from the stage the other night. All of a sudden I'm like, put your hand up, put your hand up. I hope that this book honestly changes our lives. I know that it will. I know that there are such practical things in here, and I know that this truly can change your life in so many areas. So a little further down, page 3, he says, what if we could find what's stopping us and turn it around? There's your what if, right? Start daydreaming again. What if any of us at any time could reach up and touch the stars? And I have news for you. You can. But are you going to allow yourself? Are you going to let yourself? I'm going to rabbit trail for a second. Think about when you get excited, you get motivated, it's New Year resolutions, or it's just a decision like, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be thankful, right? You're going to start writing in your gratitude journal, or I'm going to, I'm going to do this IP, I'm going to do this now, right? What happens about 5 days later? Maybe a week if you're lucky. What happens? All of a sudden, you forgot, you woke up late. Oh, it's one day, no big deal. We forget. All of a sudden, we're like way over here, right? That's what happens really quickly when we read books like this and we get new tips. We're like, yeah, I can do this. 5 days later, meow, squirrel, right? So this book, we are going to stick together. We are going to put these really, really practical things in, and we're going to hold each other accountable. So use the chat as you're listening to me, as we go week to week. Use the chat, share your wins. Tell each other what your week was like. Tell each other, oh my gosh, I had a brain squirrel this week. Or, oh my goodness, I've been really paying attention to what's going on between my ears. And you can even be really specific. And I think the more that we can share like that, the more that this becomes real, right? The more that you realize, hey, I'm not alone in this. There's 30 people on the Zoom right now who all are here because they want to be better, okay? So he says, when he got onto this journey, I began the first part of my search by studying something called human behavior. That's something that you can get a degree in without ever really figuring it out. And I did laugh out loud because I'm like, that's so true. No one's really figured it out, but there's people walking around with degrees, right? How do you put a test on that? He said, I studied something called motivational marketing. Teaches us what makes people do what they do even when they don't want to do it. There's actually a verse in the Bible that says, why do I do what I do that I don't want to do? And I think I mixed up the words, but do you know what I'm saying? And that stood out to me the first time I read it because I'm like, yeah, I wake up and I want to be good and I want to be positive and I want to do all those right things, but then somehow something takes over. So why do I have the want to, right? But I don't have the know-how. He says, when I completed my coursework, it was my final option that you can my final opinion that you can never really get anyone to do anything they don't want to do unless you force it. I decided that in most of the world, force is called advertising. right? They use advertising to get people, they coerce. Eventually, I recognized that if I was going to find what I was looking for, I'd have to set a new course and search in a different direction. I knew there had to be a better way. I believe that mastering one's future must surely start with managing oneself. And if we could accomplish that, we could manage and master at least part of what we call life. Ruth is here with us this morning, and Ruth had a bit of an epiphany in her own story. Ruth, can you share what we were talking about in the chat the other day, just about like something that wildly happened to you in your mindset?
Yes, this book is how I realized early on that the personal growth is so crucial, because I was a brand new silver. I'd just been an ambassador for like 3 or 4 months, and I was getting really discouraged about business growth or the lack of it. And so I kept seeing all of the jewels say personal growth, read the books. So I'm like, okay, I'll try this. And you know how Sonia and Helen actually have this series on YouTube from way back when. So I bought the book, I read it in December, and the end of December, my business just started exploding. I went gold a couple months later, but I was like, that really works. And it was the first time that I had even been exposed to this kind of thinking, because like you and most of us, I grew up, my mom told me, she's like, you daydream way too much. She's like, stop reading, stop writing. Like those aren't practical things. It's like, stop, like get your head out of the clouds. Like she literally said things like this to me, and she thought she was being helpful, right? Because our parents want us to be successful in the world. And the world says, you know, go to school, get a job, do the safe thing. That's what the world is telling us to do. So she was just copying that. But I just love how he says we can have both. We can have our head in the clouds, our head among the stars, our feet on the ground doing. We can have it both. And how he starts the very book, like it's ingrained in us. Like we know we deserve this. We know that we can have that good life. And so I love how he's going to give us the tools in this book to help rewrite our brain. I love that all of the science is there because, yeah, and I remember, so in January too, because I just read this book in December, I went to my very first Plexus event, Super Saturday in January. I was with my sponsor, my mother-in-law, and I just remember like throwing up this book on her on our drive down to Richmond, because I was just so like enamored with this, like, oh, it doesn't have to be, oh, this is just the way I am. Like, no, I can change my life. I really can. So yeah, I'm like, okay. So I've never turned back from reading the books and the personal growth, because I saw it work.
I love that. That is just, it's so true though. And the important thing is to learn while you earn. So you want to be careful that we always want to do personal growth, but you don't want to get into a place where you are so busy doing personal growth that you're never working your business. You're always trying to get ready to go, right? The whole thing with Ruth and I is we are learning as we go, and you will do that forever. You won't ever stop learning. You want to be a forever student, but you don't want to be like, I'm getting ready, because you will always hide behind, I'm getting ready. So anyways, we're going to apply this as we keep working together and growing. I read a bunch of books this past year since last convention, and I guess I'll have to send my own team an evaluation form, but I feel like in myself a lot has changed. And it's amazing. Sometimes you read a book and you're like, oh, I don't know if it really, I can't really feel anything. But all of a sudden I've kind of taken a look back, and there's a couple books I've read, and like I can tell it's really like disturbed some of the previous mindsets I had and some of the actions that I was taking, and just planted brand new ones. And so now I'm like, that makes sense what the jewels are saying. I feel it changing who I am as a person, and at home too. So yeah. Okay, chapter 2. So it's called The Answers, right? So let's get into what do we do with this all. So he says, there's always an answer. There's countless self-help answers. That's why I was saying to you, people are always, they're going to bookstores, they're going to seminars, conventions. It's always scrambling for what's the next one, right? What's the next Rachel Hollis book? What's the next, John Maxwell book? And And people are in this constant scrambling mode. We read it, we're like, yes, I can do this. We go to a convention or a seminar and we leave and we're like, yes, I got this. But then what happens after? Right? Because that's always the thing. We get our bucket totally filled up. You read a book, you're filled up. They've made their money, but we're still in the same position, right? So what's happening? Then we scramble for the next book. So he says, I tried the success techniques for myself and talked to dozens of others from many walks of life who had done the same. So he's talking about all these people that had read the book, gone to the seminar, done the course, done that all. He says then he talked to customers who attended seminars, bought books, listened to audio tools, watched the videos. He says, to learn what really worked and what did not, I immersed myself in the world of success, because that's our topic here, and imagining every facet of that fascinating field from the inside out. I consulted with leaders of the industry, examined their methods, their systems, their solutions, and in all that time of studying so much of the field of success, I found a consistent promise, the promise of our success waiting just around the corner. I realized that promise was ultimately unfulfilled. Best-selling success solutions were able to create lasting changes in only a handful of tens of thousands of people who tried them. They work for a time, but then the average individual would revert back to our old ways. And that's what I was just sharing about, right? We get going, we get started strong, and then all of a sudden we feel ourselves backsliding. After the first excitement of the brand new self-belief wore off, the dream soon gave way to the realities of everyday living. Ho-hum, it's just the way it is, back to the daily grind, and we lose that excitement. So he says, have you ever been inspired to change, to achieve something important, and then stopped? Yes, there goes my hand. Where are yours? Yes, we've all been there, right? He says, why have so many people failed at making these great ideas work? Or if they worked for a time, what made them stop working? Because they are great, aren't they? We read or we listen and we're just like, yes, that's it. That is it right there. He says it became obvious to him something vital was missing, something so essential, so important to the whole process of achieving success that without it, solutions wouldn't work, at least not for any length of time. The problem is not with the books. It's not with the seminars. It's not with the motivational speaking. Those are all good. He said they could work and they should work, but there has to be a good reason why the help they give us isn't permanent. Have you guys often found yourself pondering that? Right? Like, what is it here? Why don't they last? Right? Why do they work in the beginning and then they don't continue working? So he says, I began to realize that there was also something working against us. So on page 7, halfway down, he says, I was quite young when I first heard the biblical passage that reads, as a man thinketh, so is he. I recall shaking my head thinking that cannot be. How could we possibly be what we think? Little did I understand that the biblical passage had hit the nail of truth squarely on the head. After you examine the philosophies, the theories, and the practice methods of influencing human behavior over to page 8, okay, as I did, that it gets down to the truth of one powerful fact, and that is you will become what you think about most. What are you thinking about most? What's going on in there during the day? What's the conversation between those 2 ears? Because it's way more important and vital than the conversation you're having with anybody else during the day. It took me a while to learn to listen to what was actually going on, right? Because you think, oh, that's easy. You kind of stop and you try to think, like, what am I thinking? But what you'll notice is you will start hearing the same thoughts over and over and over throughout the day, especially once you pay attention and read a book like this. I encourage you to write some of those down. Get them to paper, right? Put them in the spotlight so that you can just crush and destroy those things, because they are crushing and destroying your dreams right now. So he says, your success or failure in anything large or small will depend on your programming, what you accept from others, and what you say when you talk to yourself. Do you know that just because someone says something to you, you don't have to either believe it or take it as fact? I learned that in my about late 20s, early 30s. Someone said to me, just because they tell it to you doesn't mean you got to take it to heart. But we're people pleasers, most of us by nature, and we naturally do. We're like, oh, the first time someone said to me, I did something a little out there, they're like, what makes you think you could do that? And at first I was like, oh, what does make me think I'd do that? And then I was like, no, unless you ask, the answer is always no. That's the motto that I live by. If you don't ask, the answer is always no, right? But people will try to like keep you down and keep you suppressed. It's like that example of the crabs in the basket, right? You don't need a lid on a basket with 2 crabs because one will start going and the other one will always pull it down. Doesn't matter which one's going first. And that is how it is in life. So he says today research continues that the brain is giving up more and more of its secrets. The answer to the problem turned out to be the result of something that had been almost entirely overlooked. We're trying to force the brain to do something it hasn't been programmed to do. That's not how the brain is wired, though. It actually has to be wired. So we're always pushing against the grain. He said the reason why some people accomplish nearly any task more easily than others, achieve their goals more readily, and live their lives more fully is this. Are you ready? You guys ready to write? Those who appear to be luckier than the rest have actually only gotten better mental programming. Hang on, I just read that wrong. Those who appear to be luckier than the rest have actually only gotten better mental programming to begin with, or have learned how to erase their old negative programming. That's the key part. They have learned to erase their old negative programming and replace it with something better. I assure you that at some point in your life, somebody has programmed you with a negative soundtrack. I promise you. It might be obvious, it might not be obvious. It could be a parent, it could be a grandmother. I had my grandmother put me in absolute tears when I said I was going to homeschool the kids. What makes you think you can do that? What makes you think you're qualified? What makes you? Right? Get rid of the old soundtracks. He says it's no longer a success theory. It's a simple but powerful fact. Neither luck nor desire has the slightest thing to do with it. It makes no difference whether we believe it or not. The brain simply believes what we tell it the most. And what you tell it about you, it will create. It has no choice. That's why you hear the constant repetition of speaking out loud. It's not a hocus pocus theory. It's not a it can come across a little bit whatever. I'm not into word faith. I'll be the first one to tell you that. I am not into prosperity gospel or word faith, but this is different. This is brain neuroplasticity. And what you constantly are telling yourself, especially when you ask it in the form of a question, your brain has to go to work trying to figure out, how am I going to do that? We've got a whole bunch of free codes right now. What are you telling yourself? Some of the things I'm telling myself is, why are my codes disappearing so quickly? My brain will go to work and figure out how to get rid of those codes so quickly. You got to say it more than once. You got to start believing, right? How come my team is growing so fast? Where are all these amazing leaders coming from? It matters, right? Get your brain looking for a solution. So have you ever considered just how much of what you do, how you act, how successful you are is dependent on the conditioning and programming that you receive from others? It is vitally, vitally important. It is vitally impossible for any of us to do anything, no matter how insignificant, without being affected by that programming. Every step you take, every move you make, and every word is affected, okay, by what has been programmed previously. You'll notice, ever been somewhere? Okay, we're going to talk plexus for a minute. Ever been somewhere and you are in a store, you're out and about, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're at a family gathering, and back here you're like, oh my gosh, they really need this. Like, I've got to tell them. I really got to figure out a way to tell them. I really need them. Do I leave? Do I tell them? Don't I tell them? But I really need to tell them. Instantly your programming kicks in and you're going to decide if you're going to tell them or not based on your programming. So if you've been told before, you shouldn't talk to strangers. How many times have we heard that growing up? Okay, our parents meant well. It was to protect us. You shouldn't talk to strangers. Like, why is that better than what I have? There's all these different programmings, and all of a sudden, in less than a split second, you will decide if you are going to share or not. You see how that comes in effect from way, way long ago? Okay, so it's super important. He said it follows that if every action you take of any kind is affected by prior programming, then the end result of your actions is equally affected, right? That makes sense. How successful you will be at anything is extraordinarily tied directly to the words and beliefs about yourself that you have stored up in your subconscious mind. And what is stored there for most of us was decided by someone else. That is impactful. That bulk of what you are believing right now about yourself was put there by someone else. My mom's motto, my mom's had a bit of a hellish life. Her motto, though, has always been never give up. She's got it on her license plate. And that is probably where I get a lot of my P&V that I'm full of, because of it's just been drilled into me. There's been other things drilled in from home that aren't so great, but that never give up, like I will never give up. And so do you see how that programming comes into play, right? So that's huge. The human brain, the incredibly powerful personal biochemical computer that we each have, is capable of doing for you anything reasonable that you would like to do. Take note of the word reasonable. Right? We got to still stay realistic. We got to daydream. We got to stay realistic in terms of, it's got to not hurt others, right? It's got to be beneficial for you. We still need to follow the golden rule. But you have to know how to treat it. You have to know how to wire it in the right way. If you do it right and give it the right directions, it will do the right thing. And we're talking about your brain. It will. Here's a story. Here's my favorite story. Give me 1 second for a drink. The 148,000 No's. Who has the book here? Awesome. Show me the book. Good. This story, remember I said I read this before, and there are a few things that really stayed with me. Things that as I'm going through my day, I'll often come to the forefront. This one affects my parenting. Not perfect at it, not even by a long shot, but essentially he says here, during the first 18 years of our lives, if we grew up in a fairly average, reasonably positive home, we were told no, or what we could not do or could not make work, more than 148,000 times. Give me 1 sec. Isn't that crazy? 148,000 times. I don't know who's counting, but nonetheless, if you were more fortunate, you may have been told no only about 100,000 times, maybe 50,000. However many, it is considerably more negative programming than the positive. So, he says he asked a bunch of people, or he has asked a bunch of people over time, how many times can you remember being encouraged with positive programming going in? Most people can only remember 3 or 4 times at best. Isn't that shocking? My eyeballs almost fell out onto the page. 3 or 4 times. And it was interesting. I had a friend of me tucking her kids into bed. This is years ago. And she said she was really trying to enforce gratefulness and thankfulness. So she was putting her son to bed. I think he was 6 or 7 years old. And she said it just crushed her to the core. She asked him at night, tell me 3 things that you love about yourself or that you feel you're good at. And she would give him a penny every night for every time he said something, when we still had pennies in Canada. She said he could barely think of one. And she left his room crying. She's like, I only asked him for a couple. She's like, he literally couldn't verbalize anything that he thought was good about himself, or that he was good at, or that he had a strength in. At kids at that age that should be wildly daydreaming, do you see where I'm going at and why this story was so impactful to me? How easily do we just, and I'm talking about the kid part so much because this is who we are as adults now, right? Don't run so fast down the hall. Don't put your shoes on the floor, get them on the carpet, right? When you come in with wet boots. Don't leave your jacket on the floor. Don't. And it was amazing. I realized I'm still doing it, you guys. I'm far from having this accomplished. I still catch myself all day long. How many times I'm saying, don't do that. Don't sit on there, right? Don't leave that on the counter. Don't. So he says, the negative programming that we all received has come to us quite unintentionally. It's come to us from parents who want to protect us. It's come to us from brothers and sisters, from school teachers, schoolmates, associates at work, right? Essentially friends, advertising, the 6 o'clock news on TV. And he says, unlimited posts on the internet, leading behavioral researchers have told us as much as 77% of everything we think is negative. That is a scary statistic. 77% of everything we think. At the same time, researchers have said that as much as 75% of illnesses are self-induced. Write that down. 75% of illnesses are self-induced. Why? Because of the mindsets behind the decisions that we make. Right? That can lead to our daily schedules, leading to stress, leading to leaky gut, leading to 80% of illness and disease that we teach people about. That can be to mindsets relating to relationships, which relate to stress. Okay, you know where we're going. It can relate to which foods you choose in the grocery store, whether you decide to stand up and work out. Maybe you went one time, maybe you went to try to do something new for exercise, and maybe you took one person to say, what makes you think you can do that? You're actually going to try to run around that block. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see where I'm going with this? Okay, that means that as much as 77% or more of all our programming is the wrong kind. There's hope, don't worry. We're going to get through this thing. Page 12, most of the programming we received was the wrong kind. We've determined that. We took it to heart. Layer by layer, our self-worth and our self-identity was created. Okay, in times we ourselves joined in. We began to believe what we were being told by others and what we were telling ourselves was true, right? You start believing it. It goes around so many times. Well, it must be true then, right? No matter how innocently given or subtly implied, we began hearing the same words and thoughts repeatedly, hundreds, thousands of times we were told, or we told ourselves, what we could not do and could not accomplish. Repetition is a convincing argument. Eventually, we believed what others told us, and what we told ourselves most, we began to live out the picture of ourselves we had created in our minds. Is this resonating with anybody? Yeah. It's kind of like that, oh boy moment, right? But thank the Lord we have each other, and we have the Lord, and we have things like this, right? We do not have to stay in a bondage of all that old self. It doesn't matter how many years we've been in it. He says, in time we became what we most believed about ourselves, and in doing so we created the wall of failure and self-doubt that for most of us will stand invisibly but powerfully between us and our unlimited future. Did you catch the word invisibly? You can't see it. That's why it's so dangerous. It's not something that you can just grab, and can't grab it like a stick and break it in half and say, I'm done with you. It's invisible. Mindset is one of those things that we have to be so intentional about because we can't see the damage that it's doing. So he says, unless the programming we received is erased or replaced with different programming, so it's not enough to just say, I'm done with you, you have to replace it, it will stay with us permanently and affect and direct everything we do for the rest of our lives. That does not have to be the case, though. Now we're going upward and onward. Okay, we understood what's going on. Ruth, anything you want to add to this?
I think just what popped into my head is why vision boards are so important, because just having, like you just read about what we picture in our heads, the words that we say, we begin to live out the picture of ourselves that we have created in our mind. So even just something as simple as putting a vision board up, when we see the pictures of the life that we envision, like the words, you know what I mean? Like our bodies just follow, like our brains start telling us, oh, that's my life, that's my life, that's my life. And we start acting on that. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. We are no longer at the mercy of our old programs and old conditioning that were never true about us in the first place. We can begin to truly live up to the unlimited potential each of us was born with. Okay, I have this starred, so it must be super important. Think for a moment what you might do differently tomorrow if you were someone else. Okay, so what if you weren't, saturated with all that old negative programming? Write it down, guys. Pop it in the chat. Who would you want to be? What kind of attitudes and mindsets? Who do you want to be? What do you see yourself doing, right? Let's start the daydream right now. Let's start the new programming right now, right? If nothing was holding you back, if you weren't told, oh, you can't do that, you're not smart enough, you're not handsome enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not confident enough, you don't have the right words, you're not a good speaker. If none of that was there, what's your vision? What would you be doing right now? I'm going to tell you something. I told a lot of my team, darn it, I will be a diamond trainer for Plexus at some point. That is my dream. That is my vision. How is it going to happen? I have no idea, but I'm telling myself every day. I told Alec, and a lot of corp knows, I will be a diamond trainer one day, so just watch and wait for me. What are you telling yourself? What do you want to be? We all have different mindsets and different goals. They don't have to look the same, but they have to be something that makes you feel so amazing that you could literally burst at the seams. Okay? So that's important. He says, all success ultimately is up to the individual. It isn't the pen. Write this one down. All success ultimately is up to the individual. It isn't the pen, it's the writer. It's not the pen's fault, it's the person directing the pen, right? It isn't the road, it's the runner who counts. I love that. It isn't the pen, it's the writer. It isn't the pen, it's the writer, right? Tell yourself that. You guys are the writers. Whatever age you are now, doesn't matter, guys, how many successes, how many failures, it doesn't matter. Okay, what if you could do it in such a way that you could affect and improve your attitudes and your behaviors quickly? We don't want to take 5 years to get to our new mindsets. Plexus is going to be like in every corner of the planet by then, probably. Like, we need to work now. We don't want to go through a 5-year system. What if you could do it, though, in a really quick, easy to implement way? Would you be with me? There's my hand. Now I feel awkward about it. Right? Well, I'm excited to tell you that that is actually what this book is going to be about. Easy, everyday implementation strategies that you actually are able to do without a university degree. Okay, we can each do this. It's not going to take us years and years and years to reprogram, but it's going to take starting and it's going to take wanting to. I should say it's going to take wanting to and it's going to take starting, right? We are the writers. The pen will not do it for us, right? You have to direct the pen. So he says, when you decide to apply the new understanding that we're going to learn, because the brain can do it, we just have to actually do it. He says, if you apply this understanding to your everyday life in a simple, dedicated way, that unfilled promise at the end of your success journey can at least be realized, and you can start to have hope. Chapter 3 is a really neat chapter. I want you guys to read through it. We won't go through it all right now, except you guys, if you want to share a few things that stand out. There's a list here of the rules of success. Now, by rules of success, I mean things you've heard from your parents, things you've heard on stage from a speaker, things that are written in a book. It's that if you do these, you should be successful, right? It's the do it all right and you'll have everything you want. There's a lot of them, right? Believe in yourself, meditate daily, be creative, think big, right? You've heard them, right? We could probably regurgitate them, no problem. There is 2.5 pages of them. Don't procrastinate, right? Stay healthy. Don't hate people, love your enemies. Yeah. If it was so easy, why isn't it working? Okay, he says this list of self-improvement teachings suggests that you've been given most of the keys to success. If you follow the rules, it should, right, theoretically create positive change, right? But it's not, is it, for most people? You might get, like he said, a handful out of thousands and thousands of people. What's the difference? He says there's 3 ingredients that are going to be necessary for permanent change. Here they are. Ingredient number 1, in order to work and keep working, the new idea or message has to be physically wired into your brain. It's not enough to just hear it. It's not enough to buy a poster. It has to be physically programmed into our brains. Number 2, and back to number 1 for a second, if it's not physically programmed, it will only be temporary. And do you see where we started in this book? How come these things last for a few days and all of a sudden we scroll and it's gone, right? It has to be programmed. If it's not programmed, it will only be temporary. Number 2, understanding how your brain gets wired and the role that you play in the wiring process. Okay, it's the writer, not the pen. And number 3, a new word-for-word set of directions, new programming to both your conscious and subconscious mind. Those are the 3 ingredients. He says we need specific programming vocabulary that is worded in a specific way that anybody can use at any time to replace the old negative stuff. The only solution, if you have the book on page 18, right in the middle, I got a huge circle around it. The only solution that includes all 3 of the essential ingredients that create lasting change in the brain is self-talk. Big, huge letters on your notepads, self-talk. It's the only thing that has all 3 of those. A book doesn't have all 3. Convention doesn't have all 3. Okay, self-talk. And you are the only one who can control your self-talk. Whatever you put into your mind in one way or another is what you will get back out in one way or another. So if you tell me I'm doing all the right things, it's not working, I can guarantee you that there's some self-talk going on in there, that you might be doing all the right physical things, the showing up, doing your IPA, all those things, but I can guarantee you that the self-talk isn't on board with all those, right? And so that's why you're here. That's why I'm here. My self-talk isn't pretty all the time either. But you know what I can do now after reading books like this, and I've had to read a few, is I can at least recognize it. And Paige Lepke on our team always says, when you know better, you can do better. We can't even start to do better if we don't even know and if we don't even recognize and realize. Okay, I hope that was a great start for you into this book. I hope you're excited. I hope you're feeling hopeful. Any feedback and thoughts? I would love to hear what some of you, tell me what you're thinking. Before, in case some of you leave, chapters 4 through 6 for next week. That will take you to the end of page, give me 1 second here. The chapters are really short. Some of the pages are just filled with like listings of things. The end of page 38, so from 19 to 38. Not a lot of reading, short pages. Okay, love to hear some of your feedback and some of your thoughts. What stood out today? There's 29 of you here. I know someone has something to say.
Isn't it crazy to think that 77% of what we think is negative? That's crazy.
Scary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving this. I wish I actually got the book, but this, honestly, it's sounding exactly like the stuff that I do with my meditation, Heidi, like the Silva method. That's everything that got me through everything that happened when they took my kids. There would be no way I'd be here today if I didn't learn. I need my mindset to be positive, right? And you're right, like not every day can you rock it. There's sometimes things in your day or your life that are maybe a little bit more difficult. So like the other day, I meditated for an hour just because it was kind of a rough day. And that's what I needed to do. But if I didn't know how to do that, I don't know what I probably would have been a mess. But it's like that visualization, right? I see the problem or the project, and I visualize the problem or the project, and I visualize what I'm going to do about it to fix it. Then I visualize the success or me accomplishing it. And then when you think about it, you're supposed to only think about the success, right? So, and it brings it to your life. Yeah. I did it with that Rising Stars Challenge and I won. So.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, she put it into action.
Yeah, I'm just saying I'm going to do it again for the iPad.
Totally.
I got 2 weeks. So.
Oh yeah, guys, we got a lot of iPads to win here. I hope I see it. Yes, we're doing it. We're doing it. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is important to recognize for those of us who are still stuck in the negative, when you mentioned the 77% of our thoughts are negative, erasing that kind of programming is going to take a tremendous amount of practice and diligence in doing it, and prayer. For me, I think of all of the people that I reached out to this week, and this week has been like a zero. So it's been easy to fall back into that trap of negative thinking. It's like, okay, what did I say that was, I got 2 responses, 2 likes on some posts and things that, from a business perspective. And I got to think to myself, there's more people out there that are interested in business. Why? What was it? And I even had, my wife look at my post. She said, yeah, this is good. And, it turned up nothing. So, and that was a little disconcerting. So anyway, that's my thought.
What's your name? I'll come like on your posts. Because I found that if you say in the groups, can I get some love on my posts? Other people go post, and it makes more people see your post.
Exactly.
It's nice.
And that,
yeah,
it is. And we met this gal at church, and she supported everything you just said about the likes on the post. That if you don't get an X number of likes, within a few hours, they'll drop off of people's feeds quickly.
Yeah. What's your name? I'll love on your posts.
It's Ron Skorstad. Yeah, Ron.
Okay, I'll add you, Ron. Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe you can add your names in the chat, and then for those.
Oh yeah, I can do that.
Great idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
You're so right, Ron. In it is going to take time. You're right, and that's just the whole thing. We're on a journey, and I think this side of heaven, it's gonna take time. And I don't know that we'll ever, get to perfection, but I always say, so long as we are wanting to be better, we know that we're on the right track, and those little stepping stones are going to get us much closer to those goals. But recognition, once we realize, oh my gosh, and it's not even like, I bet you your post was phenomenal. It's not even that we naturally resort like, I must have done something wrong. But you know what it is with posts? People read it, and they're almost always exceptionally good, but it's the insecurity of the reader that reads that, well, I'll never be able to do that. It sounds good, but guaranteed I won't be able to make it work, right? And it's their insecurity that they don't comment, and they just bypass that. Same thing with health. They know they need it, but, well, they can't picture themselves actually being healthy. They can't picture what feeling good actually feels like. So, yeah. And so, but we have to practice not allowing their insecurity to become our reality.
Mm-hmm. But how many of us too jump on it right away? Like, I took a year, and it's not that I'm really doing the business, but it took me a year to decide to take the products. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people that you think aren't watching really are watching.
Yes, they are watching for sure. I've had a couple of people that have been watching, and just out of nowhere, they contact me, and they've never liked one single post. They don't want anybody else to know that they're showing interest. That is how I feel. But they'll come to you. It can be disheartening, but it'll happen.
Yes, I love that you said that, because I've had that happen countless times. so long as I always tell, right, our team is, so long as you want to be known as that company girl, right? Because you don't know who's watching, but when they all of a sudden are ready, or they run into, oh my gosh, I need something, who's the first person they're going to think of when they think of Plexus? You want it to be you, or the first man in the community, whoever. But who is the first person? And you want it to be you. And if you've been consistent and you're social proofing, you're showing people what Plexus looks like. You don't got to be an advertisement every day, but show people when you're at an event, show them that you're there. When you're on a call, guys, snap a picture right now. Get your phones and snap a picture, and here can be your next post, right? Just had coffee Saturday morning with 30 other people in my company. That's all you have to write. Create curiosity. Show them, what does this look like? Why can they do it too? And they will be watching. They really will be. Smile, everyone. Yeah.
I have something I'd like to say. We are talking about that negative programming. Well, sometimes that negative programming tells you that the kids need shoes, my husband needs pants, we need groceries, we have bills to pay, and the last person you invest in is you. So that person that's reading your post may be that person, and it may take time for them to get sick enough or desperate enough to be willing to invest in them. So they need to read your post and see you over and over and over before they're ready to say, what about me? I need to invest in me. So that's happened recently. I had a gal who's been jumping into Messenger for 8 months. And finally, just last week, she got sick enough, she was willing to invest in her instead of just the kids and her husband.
That's super powerful. That's exactly how it is. You know, the time has to be right for them, not for us. Our job, share, to give them an option to choose, right? It's not about, I need you because I need to win this iPad, okay? I did make a post kind of similar like that this week. I don't normally do it, but in relation to how being blessed by Plexus impacts my kids in our homeschool. But typically, right, on an everyday basis, we're sharing, not out of selfish ambition, we're sharing, right, we need to lay down our numbers, and we need to look at people, and we need to share because we care, even though that's a cliche, but honestly, so they have an option to choose. That's what it is. People say, I don't want to sound salesy. You're not. If you sound salesy, you probably are sounding salesy, but you're just giving them an option, right? Don't push anyone to buy. It's an option. And then when they're ready and they're looking for one, they're going to remember yours. And so that's really how you love people well. But, okay, that's awesome, guys. So next week, we'll be back here, same place, same time, chapters 4 to 6. So obviously, if you have the book and if you can pre-read it, you'll be able to just find you'll get so much more out of it. Underlining helps me retain things. But even if you're just here and you're listening in, amazing. And thank you that you each took your Saturday morning. I know we all have things. I missed a family breakfast, but it's okay. This is important to me. And so we're here. So, okay, have a great week. Let's win those iPads. Can't wait to see. I know we've already got one winner on Rock and Wellness. So let's make it happen. Okay, guys, awesome Saturday. Have a good day. Thanks for joining me.